Hello, friends. Hello, friends.
A tradition unlike any other.
Oh my goodness. In your life have you seen anything like that?
There it is! Adam Scott, a life changer. Mashed potato!
Here it comes.
This is the 19th Tee podcast. Just Druids with you for tonight's episode. No KM, unfortunately, but I do have a very special guest sitting across the screen from me, back in his native New South Wales after a strong start to the 2022 side of the season. Josh Armstrong joins us from Sydney, mate. Welcome to the 19th Tee.
Thanks for having me, Nath. It's good fun, mate.
Yeah, we're looking forward to this one. You've got a pretty interesting career to date. I mean, you're so early in the piece anyway. I mean, junior President's Cups and plenty of other fun stuff to chat about along the way. But let's go back to the very beginning, I guess, is what we do with all of our guests. And where did golf begin for you? What's your earliest memories of the game?
Mate, so I'm actually a Canberra boy originally. So I actually, probably the first time I picked up a club was when I was living in Washington, DC. For early stages of my life, hitting little plastic clubs down the hallways, and yeah, kind of just fell in love with it from there. Got a handicap when I was 6 or 7 in Canberra at Gold Creek, and yeah, here I am.
So you lived in the States for the early part of your life? Is that what you're saying?
Correct, yeah. So I was born in Canberra. So mum was pregnant with me in DC, and then moved to Australia for 6 months. I was born in Canberra, then went back to DC.
Right.
So yeah, and then I moved back to Canberra when I was 4 or 5, something like that.
What's the golf like in Canberra? I mean, what's the big? I guess Federal would be probably the most well-known golf club in Canberra.
Federal or Royal Canberra, they're probably the two that everyone sort of, I guess, thinks about. Yeah. And what's the golf scene like there growing up? I mean, we speak to, obviously plenty of people who have grown up in Queensland and the plethora of courses in there, but what's it like growing up as a golfer in Canberra? It's pretty small. It's a pretty small little community that they've got there. It's just kind of good in a way. There was a lot of the juniors we'd all just meet up and go play somewhere. So it was kind of good fun in that sense. But it was pretty dismal when every time we went to a junior interstate series and we'd be battling with usually NT for the wooden spoon.
That's a bit harsh.
Yeah, that side of it's a bit how you going, but other than that, it was good fun though.
You mentioned Gold Creek there, and I was just doing a bit of research before we jumped online, and your career low round of 10 under, 62 at Gold Creek. I mean, I'm sure that might have probably been a little bit later in your golfing journey than 6 or 7, but what was that round? That must have been pretty bloody impressive.
Yeah, I think I had 10 under twice there. The first time I had it there, I was actually only about 2 weeks back from playing golf after dislocating my knee. So it was kind of nice. That was a couple of days before going to, if I remember rightly, the Master of the Amateurs down at Royal Melbourne there. So yeah, that was. I think it's just anytime you get on a good day like that, you just go with it, right? That's probably all I got to say about it, to be honest.
Is that a course record?
No, it wasn't, because we were playing preferred lies. So the running joke was that was what helped me get to it.
Mate, doesn't matter. It still says 62 on the scorecard. It doesn't matter how you get there, in my opinion.
That's what I thought too.
So you mentioned you get a handicap at the age of 6 or 7 there, and then sort of what's your golfing pathway after that? Because obviously that's probably a little bit younger than a lot of the guys and girls that we've spoken to, is getting handicaps at that age. What's your sort of journey to, I guess, getting into the New South Wales pathway and all of that sort of stuff afterwards?
So I grew up playing a lot of the Jack Newton junior events. They were actually a really good stepping stone for me, just playing the little 2-day master events and things like that. I think I was probably about 15 or 16 when I started in the Jack Newton, I'll say, like, development squads, and then progressed from there into I think I might have been 17 or 18 when I was into the New South Wales high performance squad. And yeah, obviously I was still playing for ACT as a junior up until I was 17. And then I played my first year of men's interstate series for the New South Wales when I was 17 or 18, something like that. That rings a bell. And yeah, here I am.
So your amateur career, I mean, just going back through some of the results that you had, obviously we should mention that you turned pro in 2021, but some of the results, I mean, dating back right down to 2015 in the New South Wales men's amateur final 16, the winner of the Avondale Amateur Medal in 2017, a host of top 10s, top 5s, Federal Open. I would suspect that you would have, well, I was hoping you'd do well at the Federal Open. I imagine you would have played that plenty. But I mean, when you look back at your amateur career, I mean, you had a really impressive few years as an amateur before making the call to turn pro. How do you reflect on your time as an amateur?
Yeah, I think there was definitely lots of good stuff in there. In all honesty, I was probably playing some of my best golf I had the year I won Avondale, which kind of sounds a bit funny to say that. But I just felt like my game was I knew where everything was at that point in time. Sort of 2-3 years ago, before COVID really hit, I was struggling a lot, actually. So some would say it was a bit of a weird time to turn pro after that. But yeah, I think a lot of the events in Australia I made the most of. And I think that's where it was kind of good to get the hang of being in contention for tournaments, I guess. And yeah, I tried to play overseas a little bit through there as well. Like I had a couple of half okay results at British Amateur and Players Amateur and stuff like that in the States, but nothing too fantastic. Generally, though, I feel like I had a fairly solid amateur career. Maybe not as good as some, but still decent.
You mentioned going overseas there, and I was going to bring up the British Amateur that you mentioned and the Players Amateur. What's the difference? I mean, you talk about you come from a small town, I guess, in Canberra, to then playing, I guess, more broadly in Australia up in New South Wales, and you're playing around, more national competitions, which is the first step up. But then I guess going to the States and going over to Europe must have been just a completely different step again. I mean, how do you reflect on that time and the differences that were between, I guess, Canberra to Australia to the international stage?
I think the biggest difference I noticed when I went to the first time I went over to British Amateur and those sorts of events was I quickly realised that every guy that was there, and this is no disrespect to golf in Australia, by the way, that every person in that field was good enough to win it.
Yeah.
And I think that here it kind of, you had, say, half the field was really, really solid, but then some of the others maybe didn't quite have that same depth. I think that's just the biggest difference. And obviously playing events like the British Amateur and things like that, there's lots of international guys and lots of national teams playing and all that sort of stuff. There was always probably about a dozen Aussies that were over there as well. And you kind of get a dozen guys from most other countries playing it too. So I guess that's the other cool thing about it. You meet lots of different guys and kind of see how they go about it.
You come from Canberra, a landlocked state, going over to Britain, where I guess it's largely golf is links golf, true links golf. And I think in Australia, I think a lot of people probably don't understand the true meaning of links golf. I would say that maybe we have a couple of Barnbougle and King Island and Cape Wickham are probably the ones that really spring to mind. But how big a difference was the physical golf side of things? I mean, you touched on the competition there, but what about the actual golf side of things?
I think the caliber of I'll say the array of shots you play is way different. Canberra gets a little bit windy, but over there, since it's so exposed, the wind feels almost like it's stronger than what it actually is. So there was always the great debate of, do you flight it against the wind or do you play with the wind? And I think that was where you or do you from 50 out, do you pull putter? There's just things like that. A lot of people over here don't play. And that was kind of the cool thing about it, to be honest, is you take out all theories of textbook golf and you just figure out a way to get it done. That's the massive difference over there.
Was the college option ever something that you considered, going over to the States and trying your hand over there?
Yeah, through year 11 and 12, it was. Year 11 mainly, I was really thinking about it. I did a couple campus visits to some schools. In all honesty, my grades in school weren't probably good enough anyway. And I didn't really want to study for another 3.5, 4 years or however long. I just wanted to play golf. That's all I wanted to do.
It's a really interesting decision, because I think like now there are so many more pathways to becoming a professional golfer than what there were, say, 10 years ago. Like you've gone through the amateur ranks, turned pro, and now cutting your teeth on the Aussie circuit. And I'm sure we'll be onto bigger and better things in a few years' time. There's guys like Akshay Bhatia, who we'll certainly get to as he part of your Junior President's Cup time. But, he turned pro at the age of 17 and winning on the Corn Ferry. So the array of options, I guess, are so more diverse than what they were 10 years ago. How, sort of that decision to stick with your amateur status and then sort of, I guess, move into the professional ranks, how big a call was that?
It was actually felt like it was easier than what it could have been. Don't get me wrong, the college system is great for developing a lot of people in different areas. For me personally, I just didn't feel like I was going to get better at golf while studying again. Obviously they play really high quality events and things like that, so that's great. Like we were touching on with how events over there, competition wise, it's just a little bit stronger. So that was the big selling point for going over there. But in terms of developing me as a golfer, I felt like it was just going to be a little bit more sound staying in Australia. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think I don't regret my decision, to be honest. I know there's lots of other people who get lots of benefits out of the college system, and I've referred a lot of people over to some college coaches, and they've had great success out of it. So there's obviously goods and bads. You
turned pro in 2021, as you mentioned before. Interesting time to turn pro in the middle of a pandemic. I mean, I think back to, we're probably looking at 2020, I guess, was the real height of the pandemic through 2021. What were those couple of years like for yourself? I guess in 2020, you're still an amateur. 2021, you make the call to become a pro with, I guess, very limited opportunities to play here in Australia throughout 2021. I mean, how were those 2 years for you, if you can separate them?
Well, 2020, that was, I think, I remember I just got back from playing Riversdale. And then I was sitting at home at my apartment, and I was actually with my girlfriend, and we were planning our trip going to SA Classic. And then we kind of woke up one morning and, everything had been cancelled. So I remember distinctively being on hold with Qantas to cancel my flight and get a refund or a voucher or something. I think I was on hold for like 15 hours, so I fell asleep with my phone on the call.
You and every other person.
Yeah. So I remember falling asleep with the phone call on, and I had it on speaker and I set an alarm because there was a rough time frame, and I set an alarm to wake up about an hour before that time frame. And so basically from that moment on in 2020, I remember literally just doing nothing. I think we were doing some Golf New South Wales stuff over Zoom, like trying to do some gym sessions and things like that, but it just wasn't the same. So come 2021, I guess we were able to play a little bit of golf. And when Golf New South Wales were announcing that they were going to have those regional opens, the 2-day things. Golf New South Wales were kind enough to say to myself and 2 other guys, we'll give you, I think it was 6 starts in the regional opens plus New South Wales Open.
Right.
So I said, right, done. That'll do, mate. So turned pro and I played okay in a few of those regional opens. Had my first win as a pro in one of them, which is kind of nice. But yeah, I think it was 20. Yeah, when TPS, Bonnie Doon, and those sorts of events were starting up, I basically tried to get invites into them and play my way into getting Aussie Tour card, but that was really hard. I didn't anticipate it being that hard. Like, I knew my game was good enough, but it's just thinking like, well, okay, I've actually got to play to get my status here. I don't think I prepared myself well enough for that, to be honest. So in that sense, it was a good learning curve.
You mentioned that you had a decent series throughout the regional series, and you casually dropped in that you had your first win as a pro, which we will give a bit of love to here because it's absolutely deserving. The Murray Open, a one-shot victor, and the course record 63. I mean, what does that do for you, I guess, confidence-wise, to have your first win as a pro? What's that moment like? A little bit closer than I guess you probably would have liked. You would have been much happier walking away as a 5-shot victor, but 1-shot victor coming down the stretch. Like, what's that whole sort of just moment and that last sort of half an hour coming down that last hole like?
It's pretty surreal, to be honest. You kind of you're trying not to think about like holding a trophy and all that sort of stuff, but it obviously just slips into your mind at times, and you go, "Wait, hang on a minute, we've still got some work to do here." I remember, like, I think it was myself and Daniel Fox and Charlie Dan who were in the last group, and so good mates with Charlie, and Foxy's not a bad guy either, and so we were having a bit of a chat the whole way around, and I think Foxy started charging at me through the middle of the round, and I think I was a couple behind with 5 to go. And then I made an eagle up one of the par 5s and got it back to all square. And then that just turned the tables for me. And then Foxy buggied the last as well, which was obviously good in my favour. But yeah, like I said, you're trying to focus so hard on trying to do a job, but it's challenging to not think about, what should I say in the speech? I've got to remember to do this or that. Like, so again, I think it's nice to know that early. But yeah, that was good fun.
It's funny that you mentioned that you've got to try and block out everything, but at the same time, you probably want to enjoy that moment as well. I mean, for so early in your professional career to be in, I guess, A, in the hunt, but B, ultimately holding the trophy and walking down the 18th fairway knowing that you've got a fairly good chance of winning it, you do want to allow some of those motions in. Is it a real fine balance to try and block out all that other shit, and then you're like, actually, let's try and soak a bit of this up?
A little bit. Like, there was a lot of locals out watching, which was quite nice. And I remember, like, I was trying to talk to them a little bit, trying to keep it sort of pretty chill, I guess. And I think that was my idea of trying to soak it up. But it was kind of cool to have my girlfriend was obviously playing the tournament as well, and she had the course record with me on day one. So it was kind of cool to have her there as well. Just made it a little bit more special.
When you're obviously so early in your career, as we mentioned, to taste victory, what's your mindset and anticipation going into a tournament like that? Is it, I genuinely believe I can win? Is it, let's top 10, let's top 20, let's make the cut? What's your mindset going into the week when you're so early into your professional career? Now you've got your feet probably a little bit more established on the tour. What's your mindset going into that first one?
I think I've always been a little bit of a believer in that there's probably not much point in showing up if you don't feel like you can win. I mean, obviously, in saying that, there's lots of great players out on the tour. So if you can give it your red hot chili dip and off, and sort of try and push as hard as you can, then that's all you can do, right? Maybe some weeks there's different goals that you've got, and others you're probably going, well, okay, if it's a weaker field, then maybe you feel like you've got an extra chance of trying to win there. But like I said, you can't disrespect any of the guys out here, because they can come back and bite you pretty quickly. So I think it's there's a fine line there, and I guess it's kind of taken in your stride a bit.
We do need to backtrack a little bit to 2017 to talk about the Junior President's Cup, the inaugural Junior President's Cup, I should say. The honorary captain of the international team was one Mr. Gary Player. The captain was Trevor Immelman. The honorary captain of the US team was Jack Nicklaus, arguably the greatest to ever do it, whichever side of the fence you sit on. Captain was David Toms. The international team, I mean, some pretty impressive names in there. Obviously, yourself, Fred Lee, who's a senior, I think, this year at Stanford from over here in WA. Carl Phillips doing wonderful things as well. Garrick Higo, probably a name that many people would know. I mean, it was a really interesting team when you look at it on paper, and then in the American teams, Ricky Castillo, Cole Hammer, like a few of these guys, Parker Cootie as well. I mean, what's the feeling like when you qualify in, but what's that feeling like when right, I'm in for the inaugural Junior President's Cup team? I'm going to be playing alongside some of the best, I guess, junior, for lack of a term, golfers in the world. I'm going to be working with Gary Player, Trevor Immelman. It must just blow your mind, mate.
It was actually pretty. It was a pretty cool little email I got to confirm.
It was an email. They didn't even call you.
No, it was an email. Yeah.
True.
But I remember in months to come, like I was stressing so much, saying like, "Oh, I've got to play good to," because it was based on the WAGA at that point. And I was stressing so much in months to come, like, "Oh, I've got to play good to keep my spot." And I think it was every Thursday in Australia that WAGA would update. So I would look at school and things like that, and everyone in my classes were looking at me going, "What are you doing, you weirdo?" So I think from that side of things, I was a little bit stressed about it, and kind of when it came through, I was like, "Oh, cool!" Like, I didn't really think about who was going to be there. It was more of a, "Oh, cool! I'm in the team now. I don't have to stress about it. Don't have to look at WAGA every week."
The only down part of the experience must have been those uniforms that you had to wear, because I'm just looking at your Instagram here, mate. The bright blue trousers, have they had another run since, or they are dreadful?
So look, no, Adidas were very fortunate to get us out, but there could have been some better colour choices. I'd love to try and put on one of those shirts now, I reckon, because I reckon I put around about 30 kilos since then. So.
What's the experience like? Because we must talk about working, I guess, so closely with Trevor Immelman and Gary Player, but then also I imagine there would have been time spent just as part of the whole experience with Nicholas and Toms as well. I mean, 4 genuine legends of the game. What's it like working alongside those 4 names?
It's some would say it's a golfer's dream.
Yeah.
But it was actually quite good. Trevor spread his time around to everyone on the international team, which is really nice of him. A very easy guy to talk to. He's sort of at that point in his career, obviously he's commentating, and at that point in time he was starting to commentate for, I think, Golf Channel or Fox or whichever it is. So he was sort of, trying to mix around the both, but I think he did a really good job in that sense, because he gave everyone the time that they needed. And even Davis for all that matter. He would come through and talk to even all our international guys and get to know our life stories and things like that, which is really cool. You know, I had a little chat with Gary and Jack as well on the day of the singles, which you know, I feel pretty privileged, to be honest, because I know that there's lots of people on the board who don't get to do that. Yeah, it's sometimes you just can't put that sort of stuff into words of what the feeling's like.
Yeah.
You know, especially for a golf nut like myself. Obviously, I was probably too young to really appreciate what Gary and Jack did for golf in, you know, days gone by. But like, obviously, you know enough about them, and you're kind of like, oh, holy crap, that's actually them.
when you get introduced to him, and here's little old Josh from Canberra, and hello, this is Gary, and this is Jack, and you shake their hand. What did you say to him? I don't even know what I would say. I'd just shit myself and be speechless, I guess.
Yeah, you really almost can't say anything. I think Gary didn't even sort of say, "Oh, like, it's nice to meet you." Just said, "Geez, you look like a praying mantis." And so, obviously, what am I meant to say after that? Like, I'm just laughing and shaking his hand.
He's just put you in a body bag, and you don't even know this bloke.
Yeah, pretty much. And Gary gave us the whole lecture to me and a couple of the South African guys about being really strong through the core and these typical speeches like that. And he gets down and does 10 push-ups in front of us. And I was like, and keep in mind he's in a shirt and tie and stuff like that as well. And I just thought, yeah, you don't get this every day.
Of course, Trevor Immelman is going to be the 2022 President's Cup captain as well. What are you, having worked under him, what can we expect as a captain in the President's Cup this year?
I think Trev, he was pretty big on pairing people that were good mates together. That's why Freddie and I, all the teams things, we played together. That was what Trev was really big on. So I would assume he's going to go through that same trend. But in saying that, he's very sort of, you guys are obviously good enough, so go about it in the way that you want to. Get what you want out of the week. He wasn't very sort of pushy or he wasn't very demanding in what he wanted at all. I think obviously a lot of the South African guys are very similar in their lingo and sort of ways about life as the Aussies are. So he'll be pretty sort of chilled and laid back with it all, I think. But in saying that, when it came to basically competing, he was there to win. So he's got that good balance to him.
How do you assess your performance throughout the tournament? I mean, obviously, just running through it here on day one, the morning four balls, yourself and Freddie Lee, as you mentioned, lost to Eugene Hong and Akshay Bhatia, who we'll circle back to. And then the next day, you and Freddie again, in the afternoon, you and Freddie in the Arvo beating Turner Hosh and Cannon Claycomb, and then in your singles match, defeated by Cannon Claycomb. How do you assess your performance over the couple of days at the Junior President's Cup?
I think Freddie and I in our four ball, we were pretty nervous, to be honest. Both of us didn't play very well at all. You know, Akshay and Eugene were just pretty solid and just kind of got it round. I think they won 2-1 or 3-2 or something like that and they only had 3 or 4 under in a four ball. So it wasn't the most outstanding golf. Freddie and I charged late in the foursomes from memory. We were getting pretty hyped up, which is I think that was probably a good fun part, to be honest. Singles, I played horrendously from memory. I think I got spanked, but maybe I'll just leave the score out then just to...
Yes. Good idea. I've got it here. I won't say it. That's fine. It wasn't, look, I'm sure, by your own admission there. It wasn't your best performance in the singles, but obviously the States did end up winning the inaugural Junior Presidents Cup. We mentioned his name a couple of times there, Akshay Bhatia. I mean, so much said about the guy, particularly in the last week, having won on the Corn Ferry Tour. But was it obvious to you, having played directly against him, that he was going to be this? I don't know. He's not a generational player, I don't think, but there's clearly a lot of hype around what Akshay Bhatia is going to bring to the game. Did he stand out by any stretch?
The first thing I'll say is his body hasn't changed. He's exactly the same. Probably just grown a foot.
Yeah.
From what I could tell, his game's very similar. Obviously, there's a lot of fine tuning, but I don't remember it being very, I'll say, outlier. So nothing was absolutely fantastic about it. Guys probably say that about me, but that's fine. I think there's Akshay was just a very good fighter, and I think that's something that will always stick with him. And I remember he got an invite into the one of the PGA events, and he needed to make a birdie or two of the last 5 or 6 holes to make the cut, and he did. So I think that's where he'll be very good, and that's kind of his niche. Which if he can sort of do that when you're not playing good, it's obviously a good feature to have when you are playing good too. So I think that'll be something you'll have to bring to the table.
Let's bring it forward to, I guess, 2021. We've spoken about a couple of really nice results for yourself. 2022, I mean, it's the season obviously started at the back end of the year there last year, and really exciting to have some events back on the schedule, and something that obviously we've called for pretty strongly on this podcast to our followers. But I guess if you look at 2022 as a year, you've started so well, and that must set you up really nicely for what's to come. Obviously, we were talking before we came on air. We're not really sure about where New Zealand's at or the WA events are at with the whole COVID situation, but a T17 finish at the Aussie PGA, and then over the weekend a T4 finish at Queensland PGA. I mean, it must set you up really nicely and give you a great level of confidence to really kickstart 2022 for you.
Yeah, 100%. I think there was definitely lots of positives out of the 2 weeks. I think last week especially, it was kind of there was a lot of opportunities to be even a little bit more. Especially over the weekend, it would have been nice to give Quayle a little bit more of a fight. Since I'm good mates with him as well, but I think the game's definitely looking pretty good for the rest of the season. It does give you the confidence where it's like, well, okay, it's good enough to compete, so you just got to let it go and just kind of get that free flowing kind of, enjoy it really.
The Friday round out there at Nudgee, I wasn't out there, but I saw the Conditties looking absolutely dreadful. Marshy, obviously being in Queensland, told me that it was raining sideways. The wind was genuinely coming in horizontally. You were the only player who finished inside the top 10 to shoot under par on that day. Conditions obviously not phasing you that much, leaning on the Canberra wind knowledge. How'd you pull that one together?
I guess a little bit. In all honesty, though, I'm playing at Concord these days, but before there, I was spending 4 years at the Lakes, and I think that's where those days helped a lot for playing in those sorts of conditions. Even experience from playing in British amateurs and things like that. You learn that not every shot's going to be perfect, so you sort of lean on your chipping and putting, and sort of off you go. Hit it in the right spots, try and miss it in the right spots anyway, and make the most of opportunities when they arise.
The Aussie PGA, I mean, you, I guess throughout the first round, you were 1 over par, and then a couple of rounds of even par, and then Sunday things really clicked for you. Low round of the day alongside Brett Rankin with a 65. I mean, is it is it frustrating or pleasing when something like that happens and it all sort of comes together for one day?
Oh, well, I guess it's a bit of both, to be honest.
Yeah.
It's kind of frustrating because it's like, well, why can't I do that for the other 3 rounds?
Yeah.
But in saying that, it's nice to put together what was arguably an average week and turn it into that's not a bad finish on the leaderboard considering. In all honesty, a T17 finish with how bad I hit at the first 2 rounds is unbelievable. Like round 2, I only hit 6 greens for even par.
So moving forward now, obviously we've got the TPS events sort of lumped together there, and then the Vic Open in the middle of all of that. Have you got both eyes firmly set on the New South Wales Open out at Concord at your home club? You must be, what, you're going to have the membership completely just following you around there? It must be something that you're really looking forward to. In all seriousness, it must be something that you're pumped to go and play.
Yeah, 100%. It was there last year.
Yeah.
And it was I think Jed would be able to back me up on this. Playing a fairly sizable golf tournament on your home track's not something that everyone gets to do. So you try and soak it up as much as you can. And I had a good mate on the bag who, I just said, look, I'm just trying to enjoy it as much as I can. Obviously, I want to try and play well, but it's nice to sort of know that a lot of the members are there to support you and all that sort of stuff as well. This year, there's a bit of a talk with some of the members that obviously since I've been growing the hair out a bit, I've been sort of egging them on, saying I might bring out a mullet for New South Open week.
You and every other golfer on the Aussie tour that's under the age of about 25 at the moment. We were talking to Louis Dobler last night, and we were trying to understand who's got the better mullet between him and Jed, and he said it's quite comfortably Jed. So, well, you've got the locks there, mate. If you get it all cut in, you might give Jed a run for his money at the moment.
Mate, I think those boys have got me covered. Don't worry about
that. Does it add an element of pressure playing a relatively sizable tournament on your home deck? I mean, when you look at the prize money, I guess it's on offer. It is the third biggest one, I think, on offer on the tour this year. I mean, does it add a element of, I guess, pressure to go out there and perform?
I think the hardest thing is trying not to build the expectations of how you play, on a Saturday comp around there. And obviously, a lot of the members would know what you're capable of. So I think that's the pressure that a lot of people think about. And I think that's why it was so impressive. Jetty was able to just live it up and just absolutely go nuts against us at the PGA. In all honesty, I sort of felt that a little bit last year. I think I was maybe 6 or 7 under after the first 2 rounds, and everyone's sort of saying, oh, you normally shoot that in one day and things like that. And I'm like, well, yeah, I know. But the hardest thing is just trying to free flow and just let it go. But I think that's where it's kind of nice to, okay, that's what I know. That's what's expected. Because obviously these bigger events, you're trying to utilize them to get up the order of merit as much as possible. But this year I'm definitely looking forward to it a lot more than I was last year, to be honest.
What's the goal for this year? Obviously, as we were mentioning before, who knows what the world is really looking like as far as New Zealand and Western Australia, which is 4 events out of the schedule. What's the plan for the remainder of the year? Is it to see out the Aussie tour and then have a look at overseas? Are you cutting the season short here? What's your sort of thoughts around what you're going to be doing for 22?
Yeah, so I'll be here definitely till the end of the season. And then, now even with the Aussie tour, there's definitely a lot of avenues through the DP World now. So that could be an option depending on how the rest of the year goes. But the plan was, say, January 1 this year was to go to Corn Free Q School in the back half of the year. So go over to the States for a few months and then, try and obviously get back here for the PGA and Aussie Open and all that sort of stuff at the end of this year. But yeah, main goal was to try and get myself on the Corn Ferry Q School and get my card over there.
That's probably all the golf ones. A couple of quick fire ones that I've found while I was doing a bit of researching on you. What we normally do with all of our guests is jump on their Instagram, scroll back to their very first photo that they uploaded. Yours is just tame. There's nothing there that I can pull the piss out of you for. I mean, I reckon your photography skills have got a bit better of taking photos of the Twin Towers in Malaysia. But I mean, you played some nice courses there. I mean, Torrey Pines is on the list there. I think TPC Sawgrass would have been on there. There's the Island Hole. I mean, you played some pretty phenomenal courses in your time, and there's nothing that I can even pull the piss out of you for.
Well, if you want, then I can give you a story about probably an hour before that photo at the towers in Malaysia.
Yeah, please.
So, Malaysian amateur. I was over there with, I think there was 6 Aussies there. A few boys from Adelaide and myself and Lockie Barker, who's over at Iowa State. We decided to go have dinner at this at KL Tower, which is kind of like Sydney Tower. It's got the 360 sort of revolving bistro thing and buffet and all that sort of stuff. Phenomenal views. And so we thought, okay, we'll go for a walk after shoving our guts. Go over to the towers and do the tourist thing, take some photos, and we'll go back to the hotel. So we go for a wander. It's only about a 15, 20-minute walk, and we're obviously tourists and we've got no idea where we're bloody going. So we walk past this major bus station, and there's a guy that comes out of the bus, like running, holding this bag, and he's got blood all over his shoulder. We're like, oh, that's a bit weird. And anyway, so next minute there's about 6 other guys dressed in all black that are running after this guy. And one of them's pushed over one of our Aussie guys onto the floor and starts drilling him. And then, so we get up and anyway, so long story short, we find out later that night reading the news article that was one of the gangs in Malaysia that were after this bloke who'd stolen something from them. So yeah, that was all on the way to taking that photo on the towers.
That's the first gang-related story that we've had on the pod in 180 episodes. So that's loose.
Yeah,
that's wild. So one of the boys was getting a couple of punches thrown at him. Did you have to intervene, serious. Or like, what are you doing? Are you fight or flight?
Mate, I was I think I was 16 at that point in time, and I'm like, geez, I don't know what to do. Like, our guy wasn't hurt or anything, so he was fine, got up and, we just kept walking. But yeah, it was absolutely chaotic, and like, I had no idea what to think of the situation. Like, it all happened in a split second. We're yakking away, having a laugh, and, we're talking about, I don't know, whatever, and next minute, all these guys come running out of this bus, and this guy's got blood all over his shirt, and we're like, oh God, here we go.
That is absolutely loose. That's a wild story. You've left me. That is not where I thought that was going at all. If you gave me 10 guesses, that's definitely not where I thought it was going. One of the questions we do like to ask is what you like to do away from the golf course. What are your hobbies? But having a look at the Golf New South Wales website and the profile for yourself, your answer to that question is not much. Yeah. Care to expand on any other hobbies aside from golf?
Well, I think at that point in time when I was making that, I was playing a lot of guitar. Don't really do much of that anymore. In all honesty, I'm probably a pretty boring dude compared to a lot of the guys. I can't say I do much.
You're clearly an NBA fan, the Dallas Mavs. That's your team. Any particular reason the Mavericks are the team of choice?
Well, it was a bit of I don't know if you call it a weird sort of circumstance, but I was over in Dallas, actually, and I was pretty young. I was in this hotel room, and we could hear all these people, this noise outside, and I sort of looked down, and I was like, "Oh, there's a basketball stadium down there." And so I turned the TV on. Next thing you know, it's Dallas Mavericks playing I think it was Game 3 of the NBA Finals against Miami Heat.
Right.
So, I guess that's where it kind of came from. I was playing a little bit of basketball at that point for my school, and that's really where it left off. That was Dirk Nowitzki was playing at that point in time as well, so it was awesome.
Yeah, I was going to say Dirk would have been absolutely doing his thing. Last question for the night: your favourite player, Ricky Fowler. Ricky's certainly a favourite of this show. Not just we're obviously got our partnership with Cobra Puma, but and as does Ricky. But what's it all about Ricky that you've got the attraction to him?
I like a lot of things about a lot of different players. I like that Ricky just gets along with his business and sort of doesn't make a big fuss about it. But then again, he's still a good bloke outside of, well, at least it seems like he's a good bloke outside of golf. Can't say I've met him for a bar of soap, but I just like how he just goes about his life and goes about business. He doesn't try and sugarcoat things, doesn't try to make excuses for things, just gets in, does his stuff and goes home. And it's obviously he's not playing so great at the moment, but I think he'll come back eventually.
I think he will. There's a few swing changes going on and a few different things as well. So hopefully he's back up the rankings soon, mate. It's been a lot of fun having a chat to you, and I hope you've enjoyed it as well. And best of luck for the remainder of the season, particularly the New South Wales Open. We'd love to see you get up at your home track, and if the world returns to some sort of normality here in Western Australia, we might see you over here for a couple of events that we got here. Thanks very much, mate, for coming on and having a chat to us.
Perfect. Thanks, Nathan. Thanks for having me, mate.